Welcome to the Poultry Leadership Podcast. I'm your host, Brandon Mulnix, and this week we're doing something different. I'm not available to create another episode this week, so I'm going back in time and releasing episode 1 because it's still one of everybody's favorites and definitely one of mine. There's so much positive feedback we get from this episode. I know that not everybody's heard it, so let's go back and interview Benji Campbell from Cal-Maine Foods. Welcome to the Poultry Leadership Podcast. I'm your host, Brandon Mulnix. This is a podcast all about poultry leadership. Whether you're one day in the industry or third generation in the industry, this podcast is for you. The idea of this podcast is to share stories from industry leaders to the next generation of poultry leaders. I have the amazing pleasure today of this being the kickoff edition, and with me, live in person, I have Benji Campbell, General Manager of Cal-Maine Foods. I invited Benji along on a little trip here, and we're just enjoying some time together in Venice, Louisiana. And Benji's going to help by sharing his story. Benji, welcome to the podcast. How you doing today, bud?
I'm good. How are you? Thank you, Brandon, for having me on this. Be your first guinea pig, I would say, for this. It's hard to believe it's been 4 years since we met each other. But it's been good doing business. Like Brandon said, I'm Benji Campbell. I'm the general manager for Cal-Maine Foods at our Pittsburgh, Texas location. I grew up in a small town of Florida, Mississippi, where I graduated from Tri-County Academy. I went on from there to receive a bachelor's in business management from Delta State University, and that's where I met my beautiful wife and life partner. We also have 2 beautiful daughters, Brooklyn and Oakley.
Very cool. Have they gotten in the industry yet?
We have. They both are farm girls, living on the farm and growing up on the Cal-Maine farms that we were at in Louisiana and Edwards, Mississippi. And they both have experienced the whole packing eggs and what it takes to process eggs in our industry.
That's really cool. As we kick off this podcast, any shout outs to anybody who in your career who helps you along the journey, like you're looking to help somebody else along the journey?
So, obviously, hard work, dedication, was taught to me early by both my grandpas. Both of them were, my grandpa Adams was an entrepreneur himself, started a communication business after he got out of the Navy, and went on to run that business until his passing. And then my grandpa, Campbell, was a mechanic for the Ford Motor Company, and he was there for 40 plus years and went on to be a mechanic at a local butane supplier in Yazoo County, Mississippi. And as well as, my dad, he taught me a lot of hard work. My dad is an entrepreneur himself. In 1983, he started his own company in air conditioning and heating. And just the benefit that I got from watching him run a business as well as be a family man, really got me to where I am today. Just the hard work, the dedication that it takes to be a successful, not really but
so your dad had pretty big influence on you then?
Yeah, he definitely did. Just teaching me the right and wrongs, the what to do's, from the aspects of running a business.
So with your dad being an incredible influence on you and the industry going through, quite a bit over the last couple of years, there's a lot of big topics like avian influenza and, COVID, stuff like that. What are some of the greatest, lessons learned in the last 12 months or maybe a little longer?
Yeah, lessons learned in the past, 12 months, from a challenge at the farms is, our biosecurity practices. Obviously, we went through a pretty big challenge in 2015, and this challenge that we've been faced since 2021 and 2022. Just the the disease itself is evolving, right? And it's becoming more contagious, whether it's through, turkeys, it's through broilers, breeders, it's through, even commercial layers. That in itself has just become a challenge to our farms, and, just a daily way of life that we practice biosecurity throughout our farms just prevent that, disease from coming to us.
Looking at someone that's up and coming in the industry, what is that what does that biosecurity mean to them? Why is this that important?
What's our way of life, for one thing? Without our hens, we don't have a job. We don't take care of our hens, don't take care of the health of our hens. There's no job for us in the industry. It's, we would basically be rebuilding a complex or rehousing a complex of hens. So that's what we stress to our employees as management, the importance to practice good biosecurity, because we never know what's on our doorstep. You never know what's outside our doorstep. What can be brought onto the farms is easily contracted, and most of the the outbreaks have been narrowed back to humans bringing it into your farm.
Wow, it just seems strange that just some poor practices, driving down the road, not cleaning your stuff, walking in a barn, and just the impact that can have on a farm. You were talking earlier about the number of hens and the fact that we're still not recovered. Can you tell me a little bit more about that?
So, Brandon, with the United States has got, we got roughly 330 million people in the United States. Our USDA hatch numbers reported a 318 million hen number a couple months ago, and that leaves us about 12 million hens short of being able to supply the United States with the adequate number of eggs that is needed.
Okay, makes sense. So I'm going to change this a little bit and get a little bit more deep into who Benji Campbell is. I'm going to ask you the question: what's the most difficult thing you've gone through, and how did you overcome it?
So you're digging deep here, prying a little bit.
Yeah, that's how leaders grow.
Yeah. So probably the most difficult thing that I've ever had to go through in my life currently was my wife was involved in a car accident in December 31st of 2020. And everybody knows that 2020 was bad enough with the COVID spill there and everything that the industry, and not just the industry as a whole, but as the poultry industry as a whole, but the entire United States went through during 2012. And we decided we'd just send 2020 with a bang, literally. And her accident, it left her with broken femur on her left side that was broken in two spots. The femur bone was actually protruding out from her leg. The emergency brake vehicle, or the emergency brake pedal of her vehicle went through the lower portion of her leg, which actually broke her tibia in two, obviously tearing all the muscle tissue with that. She suffered 2 pelvic fractures, lacerated liver, a torn ACL and PCL in her right knee, just from the impact of the dashboard hitting her. She was hit head on. She was driving a Chevy Tahoe and was hit head on by an F-450, which had a ranch style flatbed that was overhanging on her side, with a guy crossed over the center line in a curve and pretty much sideswiped her, and the bed of the truck is what did the damage to her vehicle in her as well. And the worst part of that was, I was the third person on the scene, because we had just left work. I was shortly behind her heading home to, we were actually getting ready to go spend Christmas with our family. We were heading home to pack up and go see family. When this happened, the worst part about the whole deal was, when I pulled up on the scene, and I couldn't help her because there was no way that I could get her physically out of the vehicle, because of the way that the the door was smashed in and all from the vehicle. So I had to just sit there and watch my wife in pain, and trying to calm her as well, and waiting on paramedics and the fire department to get there. And I waited for over an hour before they finally got her cut out of that vehicle. And going through that was probably one of the most difficult things I've ever had to go through. We got through it. There was a lot of prayer. I reached out to a lot of people, all of our family, our coworkers, even people that we know across the poultry industry reached out to me and was asking me, what can we do for you? What can we do to help you and your wife through this situation? And biggest thing I could tell them was just pray. Pray that she'll be through, recover, 100%. And still to this day, and it just goes to show you how great this poultry industry is. And the company that, we work for, Cal-Maine Foods, I constantly have people to this day, every time that I talk to them, ask me how my wife is, how she's doing, how her recovery's going, and we're 3 years out from this thing. So that just goes to show you the family that we have, not just in Cal-Maine, because Cal-Maine's a very family-oriented company, just a great family feel, and can't speak enough about that. But just the family that the poultry industry in itself has, just the connections through the vendors that we have, just how much those people, truly care about, the people inside the industry that they're taking care of.
Yeah, man, I'm glad she's doing really well. I got to see her here in Texas and not that long ago, and she's, seems to be doing pretty well. Girls seem to be doing pretty good, a family. So yeah, glad you came through all that. So going off script a little bit with our topic here, talk about work-life balance as a leader in this industry. How do you prioritize when work is 365 days a year, because the chickens never stop, versus that family time?
Right. Yeah, and that goes back to kind of what I mentioned a little bit earlier about my dad. Owning his own business. That's anybody that knows a single business owner or an entrepreneur that's trying to. It's a 365 day a year job, and the balance that you have to have for work versus family. It's something just as a person that you have to figure out on your own. There's just sometimes that you have to say, hey, I'm at a ball game, or hey, I'm at a function, but what can I do to help figure out a certain problem or situation that you can do? And it's just a fine balance of family and company time that you kind of have to figure out personally, really.
Yeah, it's I struggle with a lot of the same challenges, being on the vendor side, because our customers never sleep. Mm-hmm. It'll work 9 to 5, and we understand that there's issues middle of the night, Christmas, and the ones I know I've really grown to like are ones that will treat customers the same way they treat their family in a lot of ways, where they're willing to give up, an evening to talk to a customer when their farm has had, been hit with AI. And you mentioned, the poultry industry is a pretty special place, and I'm glad to be part of that. For that reason alone, is just because I know that there's a lot of people that will reach out and whether there's a fire or whether there's a windstorm or family emergency, how many people reach out and say, hey, how can I help? Whether it's just prayer, whether it's, they just want to help. So that's what I love about this industry as well. Now, you're a general manager of a farm and you got a job to do. What's a win for you?
So obviously, a win for me is the fact that, my wife Deborah is still here with us. Just to go back on that last question I had for him. But a daily win, is obviously waking up every day and getting to go to a job that I love to do. Yeah, and that's another thing, kind of kicking back, to the grandparents. My grandpa Campbell told me, he said, if you find something that you love to do, it's never work. you'll never work a day in your life if you find something that you love to do. And I have found that in the poultry industry, and I truly do love getting up and going to work every day. And that's a win.
Okay. You and I are going to jump in a time machine and go back to a day much, much earlier in your career where it's a younger Benji Campbell.
Yeah.
And you're just getting started in this industry. What's one piece of advice you give that young Benji Campbell?
Don't be afraid to take chances.
Wow.
Yep.
Why do you give that advice?
Just, it's, I've been reading a book here lately that's, it's called It's Your Ship. And the biggest piece of advice that's given in that book is no matter what, adversity comes, towards you, is to not be afraid to take a chance and go outside of not necessarily a company's, comfort zone, but don't be afraid to take the chance to make a situation better.
What's the worst thing they can do? Take away your birthday?
Yeah.
Yeah, that's a quote I hear a lot. And I just goes back to one of my philosophies always been, I wouldn't be married unless I asked. You got to take those chances. They can't, what's the worst thing that can happen? They can tell you no. And until they tell you no, then you don't know what really the answer is. And so, yeah, that's great advice. That really is.
Yep.
And I'm sure that young Benji Campbell would appreciate you telling him that.
Oh, yeah.
Because it is afraid. It's,
yeah.
In these industries, when you're working through these challenges and you're afraid because they've always done it this way. As we talked about, with these young guys this week, this last day or so, and you'd hear, well, they've always been doing it that way, or, change is hard and all of these different things. But how that process got put in the first place was someone had to step up and say, hey, I think we should do it this way. And that's the way that worked. Whether that was yesterday or 10 years ago, that's the way that worked. But also be willing to make that change again, and always be working on the next thing, or, looking at it from a new perspective, or with new technologies, or just different opportunities as they come up. So let's look at the industry as a whole right now. AI is, one of the biggest problems out there, but let's look at one of the other challenges. What's the biggest challenge for you in the poultry industry?
I would say it's just the requirements that we're seeing from not necessarily just customers, but just the overall industry itself. Just the different requirements that we're having to do, whether it's caged versus cage free, and as well as just the audits that we are being asked to go through.
So what do you mean by audits? I mean, if I'm new to this, I'm an upcoming person. What is an audit? I mean, it's kind of that question is no question's too dumb here,
Sure.
Let's keep some of the basics, but what's an audit?
Yeah. So, an audit, we go through, all of our, SQF is obviously our one of our big ones, which is our safe quality foods audit. That makes sure that we're practicing all GMPs, in the processing plant, and make sure that we're doing what we say we're doing. As well as not only our bird health, our hen health, with our UEP, our AHC, requirements. From a cage-free standpoint, the AHC audit, now we're being hit with a California, Prop 12 audit, which is new audit this year that we'll be going through.
Yeah, I mean, that's the challenges that just keep coming as the world continues to change, and you guys, seem to be able to get through it. I mean, it's a lot of work, more man hours, more everything. But yeah, that's definitely a challenge. So if you could solve one problem for your team, what problem would you solve?
That's a tough question, Brandon. I've created a team, in the few years that I've been, 5 years going on now, being a general manager. We've created a team that has good camaraderie. There's good communication, between our processing and production teams. I've developed a good, strong group of leaders, as well as employees. Yeah, they work hard, and they work hard on a daily basis. They're dedicated to making things better. So I guess really the biggest problem is just that continued to continue the momentum that we've established, and in the vision, just to be the most sustainable and high quality producer of shell eggs, that we can be.
How old are you, Benji?
I'm 35.
35. So as you look forward, what's next for you in life and your career?
I take every day as a learning opportunity. Every day that I come to work, I try to learn, try to get better. So the continue learning to better improve myself as a leader, and furthering my future, in the poultry industry.
Are there anything you do like to help yourself grow and learn? Any tools out there that you take advantage of?
Well, I like to listen to everything. I take everything that our upper management in our company, things that they speak about and talk about. I take that to heart and try to learn the best that I can from them.
Okay. Is there anything that I didn't ask you that you believe is important to share with the next generation of leaders?
Yeah, it's really not you ask really good questions and some difficult ones, right? But really the only message, I guess, that I could leave behind, and it actually comes from a Bible verse that, I wrote, every football game that I played in my entire high school and college career. It comes from Mark 9:23. It says, if you can, Jesus said, everything is possible for those who believe. Yeah, and during that passage, Jesus, he's actually speaking to, father whose son was possessed by a demon. And through the father's beliefs, that demon was actually casted out from the son through Jesus and his beliefs. So the biggest thing I guess I can leave behind, and is no matter what trial or tribulation that you experience, whether it's personal or it's through your career. Every career has its own challenges. So through that career, or in just life in general, if you believe that you can do something, everything is possible. Everything is possible for those who believe, and that's probably the greatest thing that I can leave behind, Brandon.
Wow. I mean, if you go back and just listen to Benji's story throughout this and the trials, tribulation that he's been through, I can understand why he has a good team. I've happened to have met many of my team members. In fact, I spent Super Bowl Sunday 3.5 years ago with Benji. And when I met him, he invited me into his home. And that said a lot to me about this industry. And that's just something I can't ever say thank you enough. You invited me in. I was and I was new to the industry. I was inexperienced, and you didn't care. You said, hey, come break bread with me at my family's house. I'm going to introduce you to my wife. I'm going to introduce you to my kids. You better pick my wings. Otherwise, as a guest judge, otherwise, you're out the door. Right. Oh, you just included me. And it just felt so much, it just brought me in and just helped me understand why I like the industry so much. So Benji, I appreciate your time. This has been a great, great adventure.
Absolutely.
I couldn't ask for somebody that, would come on the show with me and get this thing started for the industry. So I hope this isn't the last time the industry hears from you on this podcast. Sure. Hopefully in the future we can get you back on and share about maybe one of your favorite topics, probably around deer hunting or something. And events outside of work. But
that's right.
Just appreciate your time. And as guests, please share this podcast with up and coming leaders or others in the industry that are just trying to learn and grow. This is a tool that can be used just to help people grow. When you're in a situation in life and you haven't experienced it, these stories might be able to come back through, and the things that Benji's been able to overcome may inspire others. So please share this podcast. We appreciate you and look forward to serving you as we move forward.
Good deal. Thank you, Brandon.
Hey, I hope you enjoyed that episode as much as I did. Before we go, I want to thank our sponsors, Prism Controls. They have been the main part of why this podcast exists. They really feel that growing great leaders in this industry is valuable, and so they continue to support this show. So I really want to thank you as listeners, and I encourage you to share this episode so folks understand that the Poultry Leadership Podcast is the way to grow in the industry.